Welcome back to Feed the Post. I am Joe Jackson. So today, Big Ten tournament is going to start tomorrow. I'm going to talk through all that, give my predictions, and then we're going to actually start off on the top of the show. I wasn't really planning to do this, but just the way that it worked out, we're going to go over what the Big Ten awards were. Yesterday, I gave my awards. And there's some stuff I definitely disagree with on this. Some stuff is cool with me. So we're just going to go through that quickly, and then we'll go through the entire Big Ten tournament, talk in depth a little bit about each game, and give my predictions, see what's right, what's wrong at the end of it. So leading off, though, with the Big Ten awards that were just announced today. Player of the Year, Zach Edey. Duh, obviously. There's no real thoughts or questions needed to be having there. But then where it gets interesting, I mean, I think the first team, it makes a lot of sense. I have no real disagreements there as well. You have Zach Edey, you have Braden Smith, or Zach Edey and Boo Buie were unanimous. Braden Smith and Terrence Shannon made it on both media and coaches. And then Domask made it on coaches, and Jahmir Young made it on media. I had Domask over Young, but I totally get, for Young being over Domask, slight preference, but it is what it is. So yeah, and then I think the second and third team is where it starts to get interesting. And so yeah, I'm trying to pull that up right now. But yeah, I think the awards in general, it's just interesting to see what both coaches and media kind of thought. I don't think media votes on defense and freshman team and stuff. I believe that they just vote on the first, second, third team. And so yeah, sorry. And okay, so here it is right here. So from coaches team, second team is Tony Perkins, Jahmir Young, Tyson Walker, Keisei Tominaga, AJ Storr. And then from media, Marcus Domask, who wasn't on the first team, obviously, Kel'el Ware, Tyson Walker, Garcia, AJ Storr. So I think Walker and Storr were unanimous for both. Young and Domask were obviously, they were flip-flop first and second team. Makes total sense there. And then so the two difference, Keisei Tominaga and Tony Perkins on the coaches poll, and then Kel'el Ware and Dawson Garcia on the media poll. I think I had Dawson Garcia and Coleman Hawkins, and we'll get to Coleman Hawkins in a minute. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not mad about Tony Perkins at all. I understand the Keisei Tominaga love. For me, Nebraska's tough to give a single award to, right? Because they just have so many guys. Like I made a case for Juwan Gary yesterday at making third team. And we're going to talk about Juwan Gary more in a second. But, even Rank Moss or even Bryce Williams to an extent, like I would have understood their cases. Tominaga probably would have been closer to the third team for me. I get why he's second team. And Nebraska deserves some love for sure this year. And then what else? AJ Storr. I think I had AJ Storr third team. I totally get him being unanimous second team. Tyson Walker totally makes sense. Garcia, even Kel'el Ware makes sense to me. He did have a really good year. I think number 10 in rebounding, or number 10 in points, number 2 in rebounding, and number 4 in blocks in conference play. Get it? I totally get it there. Nothing mad about. And then the third team for coaches was Kel'el Ware, so we just talked about him. Dawson Garcia, who we also just talked about. And then Payne Sandfort, Rank Moss, Brooks Barnharzer, and Ace Baldwin. On the media side, Coleman Hawkins, Payne Sandfort, Keisei Tominaga, Bruce Thornton, and Ace Baldwin. So Ace Baldwin, unanimous, I believe, third team there from both sides. Payne Sandfort, I think he deserves to be on the team. He was also on both third teams right there. Totally makes sense to me. I had him there. Scored the ball really well at an efficient level, rebounded much better this year, and also got into some facilitating. I'm not mad about that at all. Let's see, who else was there? Rank Moss, totally get. He was probably, you could make the argument he was the second. He might have even been the most impactful player for Nebraska on the third best team in the Big Ten. Bruce Thornton, I get it. I think the efficiency for me wasn't quite there, and just the efficiency combined with the not great defense, but I understand he does still put up numbers. He's one of the better point guards in the conference. Ace Baldwin makes sense. One of the best defenders in the conference. Also just a really good, especially later in the year and during conference play, became a really good scorer, became a much better more comfortable facilitating once again. He was a really good facilitator last year. So that makes sense, I think. Oh, and then Coleman Hawkins. For me, Coleman Hawkins was second team. It's just what he was to me. I don't think you can find too many more impactful players than him in the Big Ten during Big Ten play. I talked about it yesterday on the show. Like when you look at when Coleman Hawkins was on the floor, Illinois was an insanely good offense. When he was off the floor, they were not a good offense at all. And just his ability when he was playing five this year to do everything that he needed to do. I would have had him higher, but it is what it is there. Ulamog, a good supporter of the show, said Tyson Walker snubbed. Who would you have him over? I guess would be my question. I assume it'd be over Domas / Young, but and I understand the case, especially because of what Tyson Walker was tasked with, which was basically everything for Michigan State, trying to do, especially on offense, and also he is a very good defender. I think for me, the team success of Domask would put him over Walker. If he had made it, I don't think I would have been like too upset, specifically if it was over Domask or Shannon. But for me, I should still just give the slight edge to Domask because he was, I mean, I don't know. Domask was in a similar role of Walker at times where it was just he was relied on to do all the scoring. Walker's a better defender. Domask won a few more games. Splitting hairs a little bit there. All freshman team is Mackenzie Mbako, Owen Freeman, Deshaun Harris-Smith, Cam Christie, and John Blackwell. That's the five I had. I think the only one you could maybe sort of debate is that Jermichael Davis from Rutgers could have made it over Deshaun Harris-Smith. I had to share Deshaun Harris-Smith. It makes sense to me. Co-freshman of the year, which is surprising that it was is Mackenzie Mbako and Owen Freeman. I thought it was Owen Freeman's just outright. I think he had the most Big Ten freshman of the year or freshman of the week awards since Jared Solinger. And like, I'm surprised. Mbako really did start playing well towards the end of the year, and so I do get that as well. But for me, I might have had Cam Christie over Mbako. It would have been Freeman, a slight gap, and then Mbako Christie kind of like 2-3. Blackwell's thrown in there as well. I'm surprised that it's I'm just glad at least Owen Freeman got it because he's the one that deserves it. Sixth man of the year, Mason Gillis. I said maybe Parker Fox could end up winning it. Mason Gillis is probably just the clear-cut answer. Co-coaches of the year, Fred Hoiberg and Matt Painter. And this is the right answer. Like if you're forced to pick one, I think that's where the debate comes in. But if you can give it's rewarding Matt Painter for this long-term success that he's had, building this team from the ground up with all these underranked players and development and all that. But then it's also rewarding Fred Hoiberg for bringing in so many new guys, having such a low ranking to start the season, and then outperforming that, being the third best team in the Big Ten. I think that this was just the co-coaches of the year with those two is what was needed. The assistant coach of the year, Brandon Brantley from Purdue. I'm not going to say that I'm in depth on all the assistant coaches in the Big Ten, but with his development, with what Purdue bigs have done, and especially Zach Edey, gotta give him that award. That makes sense to me. I think the only thing left that I have, which will be one of the things that I dive the deepest into, is defense team, as I'm trying to find it. So 6 guys making on the all defense team. I don't know if there was just like a tie and they just included both or what, but it is Ace Baldwin Jr., who wins Defensive Player of the Year, Zach Edey, Cliff Amore, Chucky Hepburn, Brooks Barnhizer, and Kalel Ware. So for me, I don't have I wouldn't have Ace Baldwin as Defensive Player of the Year. I understand the steals and like I'm very much cool with him being on the all defense team, and he absolutely should be. He's one of the best defenders in the Big Ten. I guess it's just how voters, or I think it's just coming from the coaches here. It's how you balance like individual versus team success and like what role you play in that. As a pure individual defender, I think it makes a little bit more of a case. For me personally, I value that team aspect more. Right. And Penn State's defensive system is designed to basically allow Ace Baldwin to try to get as many steals as possible. If that steal doesn't happen, they're just getting scored on. And that was what happened a lot. I mean, I think Penn State had the 10th worst defense in the Big Ten during conference play. Yeah, 10th worst defense when Kalel Ware was on the floor during conference play. I have it pulled up here. They had a defensive rating of 114.0. And so what that means is offenses would score 114 points per 100 possessions when Ace Baldwin was on the floor. That would be in the 12th percentile, like 12th worst percentile in the entire country. It also would have been, I believe, the second worst defense in the entire Big Ten, only ahead of Michigan, because shout out Michigan. I would have had, like, if it's more of an individual and less of a team, I still would have went Amore because he's I think he was like third in the country in blocks or in block rate. He was leading the Big Ten, anchoring, like truly anchoring one of the best defenses in the country, the best defense in the Big Ten. I would have went Amori there if you're going that. But even then, Edey's the one where he doesn't quite have the blocks, although he's still Edey was number 2 or 3 in blocks in the Big Ten. And then when you just look at the on-off impact, right? When Edey was on the floor during conference play, their defensive rating was 105.2. When he was off the floor, it was 125.5. So teams were scoring 20 more points per 100 possessions when Zach Edey was off the floor compared to on during conference play. And I just think that has to matter for something. Like especially when you compare Edey, Amori, Baldwin, a lot of like their defensive system are a lot built around those guys. Like Baldwin, obviously, like I said, allow him to go get steals, allow him to pressure guards and do that. Amori, allow him to anchor both the paints, but also he can show hedge on pick and rolls and stuff like that. And then Edey anchors everything around Edey on the defensive end of we're probably going to get beat on the perimeter a good bit. We know we have Edey down there to help clean up. So I don't quite get the Baldwin thing. I don't agree with it. I understand because he is a very good defender. I don't want to take away from that fact. But for me, it's still it would have been Edey or Amori or a guy that didn't even make the Big Ten defensive list. But we'll get to him in a second. Chucky Hepburn, he makes it. I get it. He was also, if Ace Baldwin was the best perimeter defender in the league, which he probably was, Chucky has a very, very good case for being the second best. I think you reward that. I'm cool with him making the list. Same thing with Kel'el Ware. He's similar to Edey in the fact that IU's defense was just so much worse without him on the floor. And that was pretty much continuous throughout the entire year. 18.3 points per 100 possessions worse with Kel'el Ware off the floor compared to on for IU. And a lot of that's similar to an Edey type of Ware just can be this monster protecting the rim. And if there are these defensive breakdowns on the perimeter, now Ware can be down there, down low, helping protect. And then Brooks Barnhizer, he makes the last spot. So he wasn't even on my radar, just to be transparent. I was very, very surprised to see his name. I do think he was a solid defender. I just don't know if I would say he's the 6th best defender in the Big Ten or 6th most impactful defender in the Big Ten personally. He is kind of that, 6'6", whatever. He's stocky. He can guard guards if needed. He also had to guard a lot of forwards and bigs at times. Although when he was guarding bigs, Northwestern's defense is designed to just trap, get the ball out, rotate from there. Northwestern also just as a whole, they were the 11th worst defense in the Big Ten during conference play. I don't get it because I think a lot of what he does defensively, Juwan Gary just did better. And Juwan Gary is the guy that I would have had on the defensive team. I would have probably had him 3rd on potentially on Defensive Player of the Year, if not 4th. When we go to on-off splits again, when Juwan Gary was on the floor for Nebraska during Big Ten play, defensive rating of 98.2. That is in the 93rd percentile, which is basically the 30th best defense or so in the entire country. When he was off the floor, 117.4, which is in the 4th percentile. So it was 310th or something like that, 320th. So they go from a top 30, top 40 defense to 310th with him on compared to off. He can guard 1 through 4 pretty consistently. He can guard 5s if needed, depending. That one's more matchup dependent, I would say. He rebounds the ball really well. He is a super high energy dude. I was very, very surprised to see Juwan Gary not make the list. I was very Nebraska also quietly ended up with the 4th best defense in Big Ten play. That was in large part because of what Juwan Gary was able to do. And yes, Nebraska is also kind of similar to Northwestern, more of a system defense in that they're going to rotate a lot, help out in the paint, try to force stuff on the perimeter. But Juwan Gary was the guy that consistently was able to pretty much do everything that they needed. So that's my Juwan Gary and defensive team rants. I think I hit on everything else that I wanted to talk about. So we will get into the Big Ten tournament breakdown. Going to start off the first game is going to be an interesting one. Rutgers versus Maryland, the 3rd matchup of the 2 best defenses of the Big Ten and by far the 2 worst offenses. When these teams matched up, they both games, the road team won, and there was exactly 109 points scored. Usually it's like 120, 130 for most Big Ten games. So low scoring affairs, which is what you expect when both teams can't shoot and both teams defend really well. So yeah, I think Julian Reese will be a big one. He put up pretty good numbers, I believe, in both of their games. And then obviously on Maryland's side, like what can Jahmir Young do? If he can get going against this Rutgers defense that he's shown he can do against most defenses, I don't know if Rutgers has the offense to answer it, but also Rutgers has the defense to be able to slow it down. The time that Rutgers won, it was, kind of that midst of Jeremiah Williams' Linsanity type run where he was just kind of doing everything that Rutgers needed on offense. That kind of has fallen off. I did not prep, so like I don't have these games predicted already. I'm just going to kind of do this on the fly, which for most people that know me, like this is not, I'm usually a guy that wants to prep and have everything, but going off the fly here, I do think Maryland takes it. I think in the battle of two bad offenses, I trust Maryland's a little bit more just because of Jahmir Young and Julian Reese. Probably the two best offensive players on the floor out of either team. I don't expect like Mawot Mag to play at all or anything like that for Rutgers. So I'm gonna go Maryland. And then following up that great game, we get Penn State versus Michigan. Penn State won the only matchup by 6 this year. That was kind of earlier in the season. This is another game this is just a game where Michigan can't do much right now, and it seems like they've kind of just almost given up. I don't want to say given up on the year because the guys, like to some extent, they still go out there, they still play, they still try. But what they lost to Nebraska by 15, Ohio State by 23, Rutgers by 30, Purdue by 8, Northwestern by 14, Michigan State by 10, Illinois by 29, Nebraska by 20 in their past 8 games. Penn State quietly just has had like a solid year for them. They finished 9-11 in Big Ten play, and they're playing in this first round, which is kind of an indictment of what the Big Ten is at this year, that there's just so much in the middle. Penn State drew the short end of the tiebreakers, so they're playing in this game, but they're a team that, Ace Baldwin can go. He can go on offense. He can go on defense. They can force turnovers. Michigan also turns the ball over a lot. I would expect Penn State to get out of there with a win. So I have Penn State and Maryland advancing to round 2. Once round 2 does start, though, I think the first game of the day is the first and the third game will be pretty important games. First game is going to be Minnesota versus Michigan State. Minnesota's probably out of any tournament hopes except for maybe if they make the championship, but I would assume they probably have to just win the whole thing at this point to get a bid. Michigan State, their metrics have held them, so they seems like they should be in, but a win here would go a long ways for just giving them that little bit of security and just be able to kind of breathe a little bit more going into Selection Sunday. But once we break down the actual game, both teams won the home matchups this year. Michigan State almost won on the road in Minnesota, but I believe, was it a little bit of a late game collapse? I can't quite remember. But this is a tough one. This is one where I think when I look at the styles, Minnesota feels like the answer because they have Payne, they have Garcia. They've even showed recently they'll run Garcia, Fox, Payne. And if there's one thing Michigan State struggles with, that's been their weak spot all year, is that big spot, whether it be Sissoko, Cooper, even Kohler hasn't been great. Booker hasn't had a ton of minutes. So on the offensive end, they get nothing. On the defensive end, they can be solid on the interior, but even that, a lot of it is relied on perimeter play. But at the same time, Michigan State has Tyson Walker, who can go for 30 on any given night. Minnesota's defense has not been good at all lately. And even though this isn't probably what this team has shown for most of the season, this just feels like a game where Izzo figures out a way. They get a win. They know they need it. They go into March, and then they're just going to somehow make it to like the Sweet 16 because that's just what happens with Michigan State. Like I said, this is probably the toughest. This might be the toughest game to pick for the whole tournament for me. I think I'm going to lean Michigan State just because at the end of the day, I trust Tyson Walker as the ability to score more than anybody else on the floor. I assume it'll be a very close game, going to come down to really just who can hit tough shots. Michigan State generally can do that better than most teams, but if it's off, then wouldn't be shocked to see Minnesota win. Next game would be Wisconsin versus Maryland, Maryland I had winning in that first round. Wisconsin 3-8 in February and March. Maryland 2-8 in February and March. I guess Maryland would be 3-8 if this matchup did happen. Both teams underperformed just compared to different points of the year. Maryland very much underperformed compared to preseason. Wisconsin underperformed for literally the last month and a half. I was never convinced Wisconsin was this top tier team. I was never fully convinced that they were better than Illinois, but they also were winning a ton of games, and that's just gone away. And a lot of it, I think, is jumpers aren't falling. I don't think the offense is moving as much. Wisconsin, their offense is designed in principle as like they move, right? They run this continuity ball screen. So they run a pick and roll on one side. If nothing happens, they move it to the other side. But like the movement doesn't do anything. It doesn't move the defense at all. Or anything like that often. And so then it does resort to these one-on-one type plays, this isolation at times. But you know, it's just tough. And so they're relying on jumpers. They don't always, unless Wall's cooking, which Wall very much can cook. They don't really get a ton at the rim. It's a lot of jumpers or AJ Storr drives. AJ Storr has been up and down, and then the defense has fallen off. It just, in general, they haven't been good defending both the 2 and the 3. Let's see, they're 348th in 3-point percentage on defense. Now they don't give up a ton of threes, but they give up a lot of open ones when they do. 196 in 2-point percentage. Now on the flip side, that might not matter because Maryland just like can't score unless it's Jahmir Young kind of just bullying his way down low. Dante Scott can put up some numbers every once in a while. Julian Reese can get going. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't know if they'll stick Julian Reese on Tyler Wall and then put Dante Scott on Stephen Crowell. I don't remember what they did in that in their matchup this year. I think Wisconsin won that matchup by 4 points. That was just a couple weeks ago. It was at Wisconsin. Maryland obviously has good defense and can shut down some of this Wisconsin stuff, but similar to just like when we go back to the Maryland Rutgers game, that should be a pretty physical, grinded out game. I don't think they'll have enough in the tank to beat Wisconsin, even though Wisconsin's struggling. And also, Wisconsin's just going to have a little bit more to play for right now. Yes, Wisconsin's in the tournament. They're 5, 6, 7 seed, whatever that is. But they want to get as high as they can, win here. I think they do it. I know I've been chalk so far, but it might stay chalk for a little bit. We'll see what happens. Next game, which is probably the most pivotal in terms of both teams having tournament aspirations, is Iowa versus Ohio State. And so Iowa's very close. Iowa's by most reports next 4 out or like the next 8 out of the tournament. If they win 2 games, they're probably going to be in. Ohio State probably has to win 3 to get in, just where they're at, because Iowa's non-conference was, they were comparable, but just both didn't have great non-conference schedules, and both are kind of hovering around that, middle of the pack mark of the Big Ten. This should be a pretty high offensive game. I'm trying to look. Iowa won at home against Ohio State 79-77, and I think that was their only matchup of the season. And I expect this to be a lot of points scored. This is both teams that can really score on offense. Ohio State's been playing much, much better as of late, have won 6 of their last 8, 4 of their last 5, 4 in a row specifically. And a lot of it is just their offense. Their defense is starting to get a little bit better, especially with like Devin Royal now playing more minutes as a freshman. I think he can kind of be that forward off the bench that Ohio State has lacked for most of the season. But I'm leaning Iowa. Just my initial thoughts. I think that I think especially with the way that they came out against Illinois, just super flat. I think they're going to be more ready for this game. I think that also just what Ohio State wants to do, like Ohio State's going to try to force a lot of mid-range, try to take away the rim. Iowa's going to be good. Yeah, that's what Iowa wants to do, is get there. Payne Sandfort's been playing great. I think I'm going to lean Iowa in this. I think that probably I expect Sandfort and Perkins to both have good games, and then kind of the rest washes out. If Bruce Thornton and Roddy Dale can both really get going for Ohio State, then that'll be huge for them. But I'm going to lean Iowa there. Moving on, and they would get the rematch against Illinois. Last game of the second round would be IU versus Penn State for me. Now, IU is despite everything that's happened this year, right? They are the 6th seed in the Big Ten tournament. They have won their last 4 games after going on a 4-game losing streak before that. Home against Wisconsin, at Maryland, at Minnesota, home against Michigan State. They're just starting to play a little bit. This is kind of has all happened after the Mike Woodson announcement that he was being retained for 1 more year at least. Just seems to be playing a little bit more together, a little bit more energy. I still don't think they're like an elite team or anything, but the defense has started to be much, much better. And that's the big thing. I just thought Indiana's defense would be better this year. Khalil Ware makes the defense team, and he's got to stay on the floor for this game because Penn State, like where they struggle is on the interior. Penn State is going to defend the perimeter well. They're going to try to get steals, and if that doesn't happen, like IU should be able to get whatever they want. I don't think Penn State has any answer at all. Well, if IU plays well, then Penn State shouldn't have any answer for IU down low. I say that knowing that Penn State beat IU at Assembly Hall by 14 just a month ago, and I think that was their only matchup of the season as well. Yeah, that was a game where Indiana shot 60% from 2, but 26.3% from 3. The big thing though is Penn State shot 55% from 3. IU has not done a good job defending the 3-point line. They allow a lot of threes. They give up a good amount of makes. But I think unless we get this crazy shooting night again from Penn State, which could happen, I think IU's dominance down low does get them to move on to the quarterfinals. So moving on to now the quarterfinals. First game of the day would be Michigan State versus Purdue. And so Purdue, obviously, they're going to try to win this tournament. I think most fans, myself included, aren't going to be upset if they don't win it, especially if they lose round 2 or whatever. Just try to get a little bit extra rest for the tournament that really matters. That's gonna, they absolutely have to have success in. But for this game, when you look back at their singular matchup on the season, Purdue won it. Purdue won it 80-74. It was a game that Purdue controlled most of it. Michigan State had a run, but Purdue never let up the lead. Edey had 32 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks. For Michigan State, it was a lot of just scoring by committee. Walker has 14, Akins 13, Hall 12, Booker 11. And Booker came in and drilled 2 threes right away, went 0 of 3 the rest of the way. I would expect to see a little bit more of him again, just trying to draw Edey out of the paint. Michigan State will have no answers once again for Zach Edey down low. The key will be if Purdue can get anybody on the perimeter going. Against Michigan State, Braden Smith had 23 points and 3 assists. Fletcher Loyer had 15 points and 3 assists. If both of them can get going, plus Edey, I would assume Purdue wins. But if Michigan State's defense, which has been really, really good, if they can shut down the perimeter, live with Edey dropping 35 plus, but allow nothing else, that's Michigan State's path to winning right there. It's just shutting down Braden, Fletch, Lance Jones, and whoever's on the perimeter off the bench. I do think Purdue wins this one, though. I think Edey will just be too much to overcome for that. So next game, Wisconsin versus Northwestern, which will be should be a good game. Northwestern just continues to kind of grind out wins, and despite injuries, despite everything kind of going on, they still have won. They've won 4 of their last 6. They did drop 2 of their last 3, home against Iowa, at Michigan State. Picked up a big time win over Minnesota. It was a game that Minnesota just never had a chance. Northwestern wasn't losing on Boo Buie senior night. It was as simple as that. And Minnesota was the unfortunate team that ran into it. These are 2 similar style teams in the fact that both are offensive oriented and don't have great defense. Both are very slow paced teams. They're 2 of they might be the 2 slowest tempo teams in the conference this season. 2 of the 4 slowest tempo teams in the conference this season. And so they do a lot of the similar things. They're going to try to, knock down a lot of perimeter shots. They're not going to try to get to the rim all that much. And then on defense, they're going to attempt to, take away the rim, force jumpers. But both teams also have been poor at defending the 3-point line. So in a game that might come down to that, when I was actually kind of first thinking about this, I was leaning Wisconsin. But now that I think about it, if this game does come down to 3-point shooting and jump shooting, like I'm saying, that leans to Northwestern. Northwestern is 6th in the country in 3-point percentage at 39.6%. Langborg has come back from his injury. Boo Buie was the second most efficient shooter in conference play, only behind Fletcher Loyer. He was 48.3%, which is pretty crazy given the volume that he does it at. Nick Martinelli has been kind of this revelation off the bench and into the starting role now of he can kind of just get buckets in the 6 to 10 foot range. But yeah, and then Brooks Barnhizer has been good. The Nicholson injury, I don't know if I actually haven't heard anything on the Nicholson injury. I don't know if anybody does know. Let me know. That'll be a big one because just Northwestern needs something down low. Nicholson has been the guy that they can do. Nothing that I'm seeing that I've just looked up for Nicholson playing or not. So we'll see what happens there. This is another tough one. I expect this to be a very close game. During the season, Wisconsin won by 8 in their first matchup, and that was their only matchup of the season. That was at Wisconsin. Let's see what happened in that game. Let's see. Northwestern shot 6 for 21 from 3. Wisconsin shot 7 of 14 from 3. I think that's going to be pretty much, again, what it comes down to. Both of these teams are going to have to put up jumpers. I'm going to go. I'm gonna go Wisconsin. I don't love it. I don't love it at all. I'm gonna go Wisconsin. No, I'm not. I'm gonna go Northwestern. Northwestern, final answer. If this plays out like I think, where it's a lot more jump shooting fest, a very slow, grinded out type game, I trust Northwestern's offense a little more than I trust Wisconsin's offense. I don't trust either of their defenses at all. So I'm going to give it to Northwestern there. Moving on to, that would be Iowa versus Illinois. That should also be another fun game. Very high scoring game, most likely, although I believe their last game wasn't crazy high scoring yet. 73-61 that Iowa wins. Illinois did right? Yeah, Illinois won both games. Both happened within the past 3 weeks. Illinois wins both. I think Illinois does win it again. This is just a game where if it turns into a track meet, Illinois can match Iowa. If it turns into a little bit more slower, which it shouldn't, Illinois can play in the half court. Neither of these defenses are great. I trust Illinois' offense more than Iowa's offense, and so I'm going to have Iowa move on. That would leave Indiana versus Nebraska in the 6-3, closing out the quarterfinals. Let's see what happened during the season. Nebraska won at IU 85-70 just a couple weeks ago. And then they also won at home against Indiana 86-7. So 86-70 and 85-70 is what they won. Yeah, this is a game where, but see, this is a little bit of a different IU team. Since that loss to Nebraska on February 21st, IU has been playing much better. Nebraska has also been playing pretty well too. So this honestly should be a pretty good game. This should be a pretty close game, would be my guess. Let's see. Nebraska is going to try to take away the interior, which is what IU wants to do, right? Nebraska is going to try to force 3-point shots. IU doesn't like shooting a ton of threes. They also aren't great at shooting threes. Now, on the other end, Nebraska has multiple guys that they can kind of go to. They can try to draw Ware out if Ware's on masked. They'll run a lot of their handoffs at the top of the key and pick and rolls, things like that up there, using him more as a facilitator, trying to draw Ware away from the rim. And then if Renew is on him, that means that Ware would probably be on Juwan Gary. And I don't know unless Alec starts, but I don't know if Alec has Alec been starting? Alec started against Michigan. Yeah, Alec's been starting. Okay, so then Ware will be on Josiah Alec. So then he will be able to stay in the paint. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I missed that. I just didn't pop into my head. But yeah, Josiah Alec has been starting. So Ware will be on him. Renew will be on Mast. And so then that'll be probably more of can Bryce Williams, can Keisei Tominaga get going. I thought Indiana's perimeter defense was just going to be better than it was this year, but it hasn't been. Xavier Johnson is back. Was he there for? He was not there for either of those games. No, he was there for the first game. He played 15 minutes, didn't play well. This is one where See, it almost feels like at this point, because I've gone all chalk the entire way, that it's almost like there's going to be some sort of upset somewhere. It's just how it's going to go. And this feels like one where Indiana's just been hot, and I could see them then getting this win. Nebraska's already in the tournament, but they are playing for seeding for sure. I don't think a loss here would like take Nebraska out of the tournament, unless there was just like an insane amount of bid stealers, which most likely won't happen. I don't know. This is going to be a good game. I really think it would be if these two teams were to match up. This is one where my brain's telling me Nebraska because they're the better team, but my gut's telling me IU just pulls this off somehow. So I'm going to go IU, and I think probably this game is Friday, right? So the 15th. So probably Friday the 15th at like 11:30 p.m. I'm going to look really silly, and Nebraska is going to have won this game by 25 points, but I'll go IU and move on to the semifinals. So moving on to semis, that means the two matchups would be, the first one would be Purdue Northwestern. Second one would be Illinois versus IU. If that happens, all four teams would be from the states of Indiana and Illinois. First game, Purdue Northwestern. They've given two thrillers this year. Both games went to overtime. Both home teams did win. This is one where now I'm talking specifically as a Purdue fan. I wouldn't hate if Northwestern won. Let Boo Buie try to win a championship. That would be fun. Also give Purdue an extra day of rest. Not going to hurt their seeding at all, or anything like that. I would just, this is if Purdue was going to lose, I'd want it to be the second round. I don't think I wouldn't really want them to lose the first. I wouldn't want them to lose the championship, because if they're there, you might as well win it. But the second round would be kind of that middle ground of still get a little bit of play, but then you also get that little bit of rest. If this matchup were to happen, it should be a lot of fun. Like I said, both games were in overtime, and both of these matchups this year, both pretty high scoring games. Two of the 6 best shooting teams in the entire country from three. Northwestern doesn't have an answer for Edey down low at all. He put up 30 in the second game, and he put up 35 in the first game. It's going to come down to what Purdue's guards do, though, as it's going to be the theme throughout March for Purdue. In that first matchup against Northwestern, this was probably Braden Smith's worst game of the season. 12 points, 9 assists, 6 turnovers, and I think 4 of them came late in the second half and overtime. It was the one moment where he's been so much better against the hedge the rest of the season. But that Northwestern hedge against pick and roll. So when a screen is set for Purdue, their big kind of steps out to the perimeter, tries to force the ball handler, Braden Smith, in this chance to kind of step back, retreat, and go from there. It felt like he was really trying to force against that, trying to force to Edey down low. But Purdue was also 5 of 19 from 3, with Fletcher Loyer was 3 of 5 from 3. So the rest of the team was 2 of 14. So maybe Braden Smith not trusting. Even with that, Purdue very much could have won this game, very easily could have. This also turned into, because in both games, the other guards for Northwestern, Langborg and Barry, they just got hot from 3. That first matchup that Northwestern won, they were 7 of 10 combined from 3. In the second matchup, Langborg and Barry were a combined 13 of 20 from 3. It was just, I read that wrong. That's my bad. 6 of 11 from 3. Buie and Barry were a combined 13 of 20 from 3. This is a game where Northwestern has the guards to beat Purdue. They're going to run a lot of pin downs. Purdue has not been great getting around screens on the perimeter. Northwestern's a team that isn't going to get to the rim a ton. I'm going to pull up their exact stats in just a second, but I don't think they're a team that tries to get to the rim a ton. They're going to rely on their jump shots, and Purdue is going to try to, that's what they want to do. They want to take away the rim and force these jumpers. Let's see. I have them here. Yeah. Northwestern's a little bit below D1 average in terms of percentage of shots coming at the rim. If this was to break, this would be probably the most fun one, or a semifinal matchup that could happen on the top side, would be my guess. Barry being out is big, because now Jones will go on Buie. Braden Smith will go on Langborg. That does leave Fletcher Loyer on probably either Probably Martinelli, because I don't think Martinelli has shot the ball well yet. Martinelli hasn't shot well, but I don't know, but then he's been really good in the post. This could be more of a Camden Heidi game if it comes down to it, where, that first game, Boo Booey just said Fletcher Lawyer. He's every time down, he said, Fletcher Lawyer, come here. You're going to guard me now. Got the switch. In the second game, Purdue did a better job of hedging Fletch. And so having him step out on Bowie, then just kind of recovering. Purdue even showed a little bit of a zone at some point for like 2 possessions. They're going to try different things to get the ball out of Bowie's hands. And then it's Bowie's going to probably get his, Edey's going to get his. And it's really just who do you trust more on the other guys. And so is Braden Smith's the best player out of any of the other guys by far. Can he handle the Northwestern pressure and facilitate from there? Let's see. In that second game, he had, the second game, he ended up with 16 assists to 2 turnovers. He did a much better job handling the hedge. Man, the more I talk about it, Purdue should probably win this, in my opinion. I don't know if I necessarily, I'm not like crazy confident in it, but I think if I have to pick, which is what I'm doing on this show, then I'm going to, then I'm probably going to go Purdue. David Dillman says if Nicholson isn't back, they have one less guy to throw at Edey. The 2, that is also very true. And in that game against that second matchup, obviously the free throws were a huge thing. 46 attempts for Purdue, 8 for Northwestern. I think 8 of them came in the last 40 seconds, which was a double technical and then bonus and all that. That should happen again. I'm like, the free throw should be that pretty much that wide because of how Northwestern plays. Northwestern fouls almost more than any team in the entire country. They're 318th in defensive free throw rate. Purdue gets to the line more than any team, and they also foul less than most teams. So that should happen, but that is a very good point from David Dillman. If Nicholson isn't back, that means it's going to be all of Preston and Hunger. Maybe they go really small with Martinelli at the 5. In that game, Nicholson had 5 fouls, Preston had 4 fouls, Hunger had 5 fouls. Collins said before the game he had 15 fouls from his bigs. He was going to use them. He didn't lie. And so that's, with if Nicholson isn't back, I'm with Nick. It's just the injuries. It sucks for Northwestern. It really does. But I'm going to lean Purdue making the championship. Patty Ice says, I want to say Purdue is going to lose and rest, but I don't think this Purdue team can turn it off this season. He hopes Painter gives first Colvin, Heidi, and Morton a touch more minutes in the Big Ten tournament. I'm hoping to see that just in general. I'm cool. Go win the Big Ten tournament. That's one of your goals at the beginning of the season. I would like to see Braden play closer to 35 specifically for this. I've been a big proponent of Braden Smith can play 40 minutes a game. They need him out there. They really struggle without him. But try to get him 35 or less. Same thing with Edey. And get some of these other guys. Maybe get Colvin a little bit more minutes if on the off chance that he's really needed in March Madness. It will be interesting to see what Painter kind of does throughout the tournament with managing minutes. So that would lead us to the other matchup, which would be Illinois versus Indiana. And as I say, Indiana, I want to go back to Northwestern, to Nebraska, but I said Indiana. I'll stick with it. Let's see. Illinois versus Indiana. Illinois won by 8 at home. Was that their only matchup of the season? It was. I believe that was a pretty close game too, right? Indiana kept it close and also had a decent chance to win until the end. But Indiana's been playing well. This is a game where I would be shocked if Illinois doesn't make it out of this bottom quadrant. I regardless of kind of who plays, I think Illinois is the best team out of this bottom half of the bracket. Nebraska would be the team that maybe to me could give them the most run. Nebraska and then probably Iowa would be second most likely. I just think with what Domas does, with what Terrence Shannon does, they can, Terrence Shannon is just elite in transition. Domas can just tear it up in the half court. They have some of the auxiliary pieces. Hawkins can be a guy where it'll be interesting to see what they do. He'll probably be on Ware. So Illinois will have to figure that out if Indiana does start feeding Ware a ton, what they want to do there. Quincy Guerrier has the physicality to at least try to match up with Malik Renew, although Malik Renew has obviously been very, very good and can absolutely take advantage of that spot. Let's see. In that game, Xavier Johnson did play 34 minutes. Anthony Walker did start over Kalel Ware there. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just thinking now though, if for Purdue fans specifically, if they make the championship and that second game is Illinois versus Indiana, that's going to be something for Twitter discourse. Illinois didn't shoot well. Indiana didn't make a three that game. Indiana's just playing much better. But this, I mean, no, I think I'm coming around to I trust Illinois as a team. I don't know how far I'll actually pick them in March or in the tourney, but for this specifically, I'm going to go Illinois, which sets up the third matchup between Purdue and Illinois in the finals. Man, that would be something for Twitter discourse. Purdue won both of the matchups this year. It is hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. This is another one where my brain says Purdue, my gut says Illinois, where I think Purdue's the better team. And they showed that they can win on the road. They've shown they can win at home. They can beat Illinois with or without Terrence Shannon. They were down at half. They rallied back, took control in the second half. Braden Smith hit a couple huge shots. Edey got going. He had 28 points. Illinois had to change their whole defensive philosophy in that second half to try to stop Edey. And then everybody else for Purdue started getting going from 3, especially like Fletcher Loyer got going, Braden Smith. Man, this is probably the game I'm hoping for. These are the 2 teams I enjoy watching the most. And so I do hope that happens. But brain says Purdue, gut says Illinois. And I think my gut's winning. Like I think Purdue's the better team. I think Illinois is just. Yeah, I'm going to go Illinois. I'm going to say Illinois wins this. Wins the Big Ten tournament. Purdue knocks it off there. Gets knocked off there. I also I wouldn't hate it. The Illinois Northwestern, if that was also the final, that would be a really fun final. I think there can be some fun ones in general. Probably it would be you need Purdue or Northwestern, and then Illinois or Nebraska. Any of those kind of matchups, I think, would be a lot of fun. Obviously, those are the top 4 teams in the Big Ten right now in terms of seeding and ranking. Wisconsin can be fun though. So yeah, I'm going to go Illinois. I don't love it. I don't love a lot of these picks, but that's how it goes. We'll see how dumb I look in a few days. Should be a fun tournament. My guy Craig, obviously co-host Boilers in the Stands, which we will have a show in 3 hours and 42 minutes. It's at 7:00 Eastern, which we will do a bracketology show with Tonsoni from Assembly Call and Delphi Bracketology. So 7:00 Eastern, tune into that. We'll go over, obviously Purdue specific, kind of their potential matchups, but the Big Ten as whole, and also just what goes into determining who makes the bracket. So Michigan State versus like Indiana State talk will for sure happen and stuff like that. So definitely tune into that. Should be a good one. Craig says, Joe, if you had to pick one team currently not in NCAA tourney projections to go on a crazy win Big Ten tournament and punch their ticket, who are you picking? So to take the teams out that don't qualify: Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Wisconsin. Michigan State is obviously the one team that could fall out. The other 5 are locks. And even if they lose their first game, they will make it. So taking those 6 game teams out, I think it'd be the winner of Ohio State versus Iowa. I think both of those teams are playing much better as of late, especially Ohio State, really both in general. And Iowa kind of laid the egg against Illinois right there, or Illinois both times in the past 2 weeks. I don't know how they play Illinois 2 of their last 4 times. I don't know how that scheduling works, but it is what it is. I think it's the winner of that. It's Iowa or Ohio State. I also just think the bottom half of the bracket should be a little bit easier. So if I was to pick a third team, it would be Indiana. I don't think that happens, but I picked Iowa over Ohio State, so I'm going to say Iowa by default because I don't want to just say Ohio State then. But either of those teams would kind of be who I would pick for that answer. So I think that can kind of do it here. If anybody has questions or anything, you can throw them in the chat really quick. I know Craig. I didn't see this right away. Craig Brower said, "Who would have thought that?" That might have been about Wisconsin. I don't quite know, but appreciate everybody tuning in. May or may not be live tomorrow night after the games. We will see. I'm not going to promise that, but there's definitely a chance after the Michigan Penn State game happens, that I could be live on here. Talking. I'll recap the games, preview the next. We'll see what happens. You can follow me on Twitter at JoeJacksonCBB. That's where I put out a lot of my stuff. And then also, you're probably watching on YouTube, but if you are watching on Twitter, my YouTube is Feed the Post, where I will do. The plan is at least 2 film breakdowns a day for every Big Ten tournament day. So I'll do Rutgers, Maryland. I'll do Michigan, Penn State for sure. I'll do 2 of the 4 guaranteed for the first and second rounds. Then I'll do both semis and the finals. Also, a lot of content coming out for that week between Selection Sunday and March Madness starting. The goal is to have a team or a film game preview for every single Big Ten team in the tournament, including scouting report for the other team. I'll do film breakdowns of the actual games themselves as well. So definitely subscribe on Feed the Post on YouTube if you haven't already. Just helps me out a lot. If you can also hit the like button on the way out, that would be great. We're also on Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. If you do prefer audio, want to start getting this podcast going for March. And then also during the off season, I'm going to be doing a lot with AAU, with newcomers and that. So hopefully once a week, maybe once every other week, just kind of recapping who's new to the Big Ten, and then we'll get into team previews. And next thing you know, November 4th will be here, which is my birthday. That is when Big Ten basketball and college basketball will start next year, November 4th, and it'll be there before you know it. But an exciting few weeks before that to wrap up this pretty fun season that's pretty wide open. You have your top teams in the country, but even in the Purdue is a part of that, and we'll see what they can do in March. Even the Big Ten tourney. There's a lot of teams that I could see that could make runs in this. Should be fun. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we will potentially catch you tomorrow, if not sometime later this week for sure. What is... Now you guys get to see this. I don't know why